80th birthday party, and so this would be his 80th birthday cake. There's in his Navy outfit.
Edible.
Some more decorations over here.
Edible.
And
See that?
a video of different things. Starting to arrive. The Grahams are here. Bobby Graham's here. Aunt Kit's here somewhere. And there's Aunt Kit. My mother, Virginia. Graham, Trish. The guest of honor getting his name tag on.
Hi, Jeff. How's the baseball going? Who am I?
That's where you're going to give your speech, Dad.
Sir, would you like to say anything before the party starts?
Okay, very good.
You're looking fine tonight.
Yeah, I know. Bob Graham told me I cleaned up pretty well.
Happy
I told him
birthday.
I used a wire brush.
More guests are arriving now. There's Lessons are here. Iggy. Cheryl.
Hi, Gary. I'll be on camera. Hi.
I saw your mother here somewhere. Oh, Annie's over here somewhere. More of the crowd is rolling in. That was Beth. Having a few hors d'oeuvres before dinner.
Bye.
We're getting prepared to eat our birthday meal. Uncle Bob is sitting at the head of the table, looking very much like the guest of honor. His grandchildren are here. His daughter is here. All of his friends and relatives.
Let me say grace, please. This is, I was told not to say Tut's favorite grace, so this is Bob's favorite grace. Please join me. Father, bless the provision of thy bounty, set us before us. Feed our soul with the bread of life. Amen.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Especially Dad. Dad, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We're here tonight to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday. Dad was 38 years old when I was born. He had graduated from Valley High School, and he attended the University of Alabama from 1935 to 1937. And then he went to Pitt from 1937 to 1939. He had a year of pre-med and a year of dental school. I recently came across some of Dad's old notes from Pitt in Alabama, which are really interesting. Some of his anatomy notes, which didn't mean anything to me. Maybe you, Cheryl, but I mean, they were way over my head. But it was interesting to see those notes from many years ago that Dad had taken in classes. In 1941, he and Mom were married, and Dad enlisted in the Navy that same year. Well, let's see. You were married in July, and when did you go into the Navy, Dad? Well, whatever. Okay.
I enlisted in the Navy to get out of the draft. That's why no big hero. I just wanted to get out of it.
Most of Dad's years in the Navy were spent in Brazil fighting the war there. And he has many interesting stories from there, which a lot of us have heard over and over and still like to hear over and over. In 1945, he was discharged from the Navy, and he... It's true. I better say that. And worked at the Veterans Administration in Pittsburgh. Was that for 10 years, Dad? Did you tell me 10 years? Yeah. And he got a job with Social Security Administration in 1960, and Clyde Irwin over here worked with Dad for, I don't know how many years before you retired, Dad. How many years did you two work together?
I don't know, I was hired in 74.
And Clyde and my dad are still close friends and have a lot of good memories of those years together. He retired in 1977, and in fact it was kind of strange for me because that was the year I got my first teaching job. So the month I was beginning to teach, he was retiring. So he always said, well, you know, my college education was paid for, so now it was time for him to retire, and he did. So that was interesting. For me, anyway. Dad is a very good dad, very strict, but fair, and I was never allowed to get away with much. I was always kept under close, what's the word, Jim? Yeah, I'm not good with these sayings and stuff, yeah. Believe me, I was. And as a teenager, it seemed like my parents knew where I was every minute of every day. And would you agree with that, Cheryl? Some of you people that do it. Gary, yeah. Of course, all that changed at Penn State. But, yeah. But even there, though, I knew, as I always had, what was always expected of me, and that was to do my very best. And Dad was always particular about my grammar and usage as a child, and I can remember if I would speak in an incorrect manner, he would correct me right away. So I was always careful as to how I spoke, and I find myself doing the same with my children. And in fact, Patricia has a teacher who's really particular like this, and if she misses one little period or comma, she says, oh, you know, she likes the teacher, but she says, oh, she's too picky. And I say, thank God for picky teachers, and thank God for my dad, too. Because he always demanded my best, and I demanded the best of myself. Not all the time, but I tried to most of the time. Dad's always been there when I needed anything, either to be taken to an appointment or for transporting Bobby or Patricia to some athletic event. He's always been there, always been available any time of the day. He's always there for us. He's a great storyteller. I think I mentioned that before, and we still enjoy listening to his stories. And I'll say, oh, Dad, tell me about the time, you know, you were in the tornado in Beaver and the house shook and the windows crashed in, and he goes over the same story, and I just love to hear those stories, and now my kids enjoy those stories also. In fact, I asked him a couple of years ago to make a tape, an audio cassette of those stories because they're so special. That'd be nice to have for, you know, for the future. Now, I wanted to make it clear that Dad did not do all these things single-handedly. He did have a lot of help from Mom. And Mom was by his side reinforcing the values that he had taught, that he had instilled in me. And I thank Mom and Dad for all the values and ideals they instilled in me. I feel like I'm a little better today as a result of their influence. Happy birthday, Dad.
The audience. You know, when we were planning this affair, Beth explained to me that I would have to make remarks, and they were purely voluntary. So these are my voluntary remarks. You know, when I was thinking what I wanted to say this evening, I thought about how remarkable event this is and all the remarkable things that have happened. You know, the Pirates are in first place. You know, I'm thinking about this pretty special event, but the one that we really should have celebrated is when they were married 50 years. I don't know how Mama put up with them for that long. But the story I wanted to tell you is the remarkable newspaper story. As many of you know, that when we moved back to Pennsylvania, Beth and Bobby and I, Patricia wasn't around yet, lived with Mum and Tut for several months. And many of you may not know this, but I am one of the worst morning people in the world. You just don't want to talk to me before about 9 a.m. and about 3 cups of coffee. And, of course, Tut's just the opposite. He's an early riser. This was kind of neat because when we lived there, I'd finally roll out of bed in the morning and the coffee was made and the breakfast was prepared and I'd flopped out at the kitchen table and the newspaper was right next to my chair, which I thought this was neat. But the most remarkable thing about this newspaper, it's still in the wrapper. But, in the hours before I arose, Tut would take the newspaper, he would read the entire thing, he'd take a red felt-tip pen, and he would underline everything he wanted me to see. He would make little notations in the margin. See this, I don't like this. What do you think about that? Then after he was done with this whole thing, he would take that newspaper and he would fold it all the way back, just the way it came from the printing press, back with the rubber band, back in the plastic envelope, and put it right next to my chair. So every morning I'd get up and say, nah, I don't think he's done that. I'd open it up, sure enough, there's all the remarkable comments.
What you didn't know, Jim, that was my newspaper. I always wondered where those articles came from.
He always was a thrifty guy, Dave. That's probably true. So that's just one of the stories that I could tell about Tut, and he made me promise that I wouldn't tell anymore. Happy birthday, Tut.
Cousin Dennis, who couldn't be here tonight, he lives in Chicago with his wife Fran. And growing up, since I was an only child, there were 4 of us cousins who were very close. We did a lot of things together. And Gary was the youngest. He's the one videotaping this. And I was next. Cheryl was a year older. And then her brother, Dennis, the one from Chicago, wrote this letter. And I can't believe it. This, I think, will mean a lot to especially relatives here and to some of the neighbors. Maybe they lived in the neighborhood a long time. But it's amazing how much he remembered over the years. Like Uncle Clyde said, I couldn't believe what all Dennis remembered. And by the way, I did talk to him on the phone not too long ago, and we had invited them, and they travel a lot, and he said he regretted he couldn't be here tonight, but he did send this letter instead. So, anyway, and by the way, there's a package with it. Okay, it starts with Ola, because that's my dad's favorite greeting. This is a short story about Uncle Bob. In the early years, as I recall, much of his life was spent holding court and telling stories from the corner of the booth at 4537 Stonecroft Drive. Mom and Dad used to have a booth in the kitchen years ago. There he would sit, resplendent in his 2-pocket flannel shirt. One for glasses and one for smoke. Hay-band slacks, naga hide, and neoprene shoes that were guaranteed to never wear out or they'd be replaced free of charge. Regardless of the size of the crowd, getting a drink was never a problem. There were literally bushels of glasses to choose from, and each invariably prompted a recollection on his part of the fit of that particular glass over his nose. Dad always had a problem with certain glasses couldn't fit over his nose. From this corner of the kitchen, there flowed a steady stream of stories. Stories of what? Stories of the constant observations from surveillance activities at the kitchen window. He couldn't say you, Dad, but some of these other people he could, yeah. Or early mornings in the breezeway involving the Crofts, Lichtenfelds, Floyd, Sartos, and Allerton. Some of these people are here, so I wonder if they knew how much he knew. The stories also extended to parts of the neighborhood that were not visible from this strategic perch. How did he truly know that Martha Rickard was going around inside her house in the nude? And how many times did we all hear that story? The neighborhood provided many stories for him over the years, ranging from the reverie of Bob, Hap, and Doc to the helping hand to Martha Maines and her car. Outside of his neighborhood, he always moved with caution and care. Uncle Jack may have been a mailman and a policeman. Uncle Jack is sitting over here at the corner. But Uncle Bob took security and the mail into his own hands. At the first sign of dusk, he would always head for home to make sure the lights were on, and has he ever left a car at the mall without the club? As for the Postal Service, well, thank you, but he picks up his check on the day they are due for delivery. All of this talk of neighborhood is not to imply that Uncle Bob is not a worldly person. No, sir. His tales range from boyhood swimming in the river near Blairsville, where he tells of coming eyeball to eyeball with floating fecal matter, to fighting the raging war against syphilis and gonorrhea in the Battle of Brazil, to stories of humanitarian heroism in the name of delivering Social Security services to the outer reaches of the Allegheny Valley. While troubled for much of his life by gastrointestinal problems, he has continuously gone out of his way to show his system who is really in charge. Whether it has been hot buttered pizza at Carbone's, Dad would put butter on his pizza here when we ate here, greasy fish sandwiches at Fat Sackles, or a Sunday afternoon beer at the New Alexandria Firemen's Club. This is a guy who knows food. After all, where do you think Starbucks came up with some of their coffee ideas? Could it have been from the original whipped cream coffee man? Every story that he ever told involved the use of nicknames and pet names for the characters, even if it was only an exaggerated pronunciation of a rightful name. This was something that even he himself, as bull-necked Mooseface, was subjected to. When Dad went into the Navy, he put on like 50 pounds or something, right, Dad? And he called himself bull-necked Mooseface, so that's what he named himself. So often we heard the call again and again and again of, Kitty, hey, Kitty. I never was certain if she was hard of hearing or just ignoring him. And as the youngest of the Klein girls, I am sure Aunt Virginia, who's sitting over here next to Uncle Jeff, never minded being called Babe, especially since this was long before that cute little story from New Zealand. Dad always called her that. I don't know, there must be a reason, but I don't know what. From day one. It was the combination of Bob and Babe, however, that leaves the most lasting impression, as the two of them would pick and pound out the familiar refrain to Willie Roy the Crippled Boy every time there was a family party. I can remember them, and they'd be like this on the piano, hands up and down. Remember that? You know, picture that, people who were there. Over the intervening decades, many types of music has come and gone, and most have gone without Uncle Bob. Who could forget his reaction to such classics as the toilet flush at the end of a Chicago Transit Authority song, or the repetitive lyrics of the Beatles, she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, on that note, the story ends. The enclosed is not much of a gift, but it may help you keep your beat. Happy 80th birthday and Happy New Year. His dad always said that. Dennis, Fran, Blake, and Clarissa. And Jim's going to get the gift that came from Dennis. And I told people not to bring gifts. Like Dad said, you know, please, he's 80, what does he need or whatever. But Dennis must have thought there was something symbolic here that he sent this from Chicago for Dad for his birthday. So why don't you open it, Dad? Let's see what it is. That was great, Dennis. I have to write him a note. That was great. Do you need your glasses, Dad?
No. He's got that breath good, I'll tell you. Country music album. John could stick your Williams together. I used to listen to Doc Williams all the time, so he doesn't forget.
Back a ways, and all of a sudden he saw something shiny in the water. So he just laid there and waited for the tide to come in. Finally it got to where he could just reach out and pick it out of the water. So here it was a bottle. And you know this story about the genie in the bottle. So the genie comes out, he says, never mind all that stuff. He says, I want a horse, a gorilla, and a chipmunk. And she says, okay. You know, snap, snap, snap. He gets the horse, the gorilla, and the chipmunk. He says, you know, I have to ask you what you want this for. He says, well, I'm going to ride the horse all over the world. And he says, and the gorilla? Well, the gorilla's to lift me up and put me in the seat. And what's the chipmunk for? He says, so, I know they're always bad. There's always good in something. Maybe that's what's good about the chipmunk.
We do this, but that fellow sitting there in the green coat said, you have to swap tonight. Seems like Bob and Kit, Beth went on vacation. This is when Beth was younger, of course. We always went on vacation with us. She didn't get out of the sight. And I don't know where they were, but Bob had purchased some few bottles that were cheaper than what he could buy at home. And he put them in his suitcase. So they stopped at the motel for the night. And Bob got the key to the room, and they went up to the room. The room was occupied. So Bob came back down. Oh, Bud said that here's another key. So Bob went up. That room was occupied. Come back down. Of course, third time's the charm. So they gave Bob another key, and Bob went up. Nobody in the room. He had his suitcase in his hand. Flung the suitcase up on a luggage rack. All he heard was clink, clink, clink. He sent Kitty and Beth out to eat. When they came back, the room was strung with clothes that Bob had rinsed up. Happy birthday, Bob.
That was nothing. I was there one night. We'd been invited out for dinner. And Bob said, we were all sitting there eating. We were well into the dinner. All of a sudden, he jumps from the chair, rushes to the breezeway, picks up a shotgun, kills a groundhog. And his wife goes nuts. She can't, Bob, what will the neighbors think? I don't give a damn. I've been trying to kill that chipmunk. I got it. But the groundhog, he killed the groundhog. So I thought, we let that go by. That was nothing unusual for the chief because we had hunted together for years, and it didn't excite me too much. But I really feel that this is quite an accomplishment for this man to become 80 years old. Because I've known him for over 50 years. And he's really been a character. And usually, good guys don't last this long. That's about the best I can say about it. Good guys don't last this long. And I hope you'll last a lot longer. And I received the other day, it was my birthday, it was in this month also. And one of my wonderful nephews sent me a birthday card. And this card, it said, it's your birthday. A wonderful time of the year. When the cake comes down the chimney, you blow out the candles on your eggs. Everyone sings Valentine carols to you. And while you open your pumpkin, what the hell? You're old, you're confused, you don't know the difference. Happy birthday.
The Battle of Brazil story is your 50th anniversary. But one day when I was working for a company called Automotive Industry Company, Uncle Bob was working in Leechburg at I think it was the I don't know, it was some building in Leechburg, and I was going to be in the area. He said, why don't you stop and we'll meet for lunch? Well, I had no idea where this building was in Leechburg. But I'm driving up and down like the main road there, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I saw two older women walking into this building, and I knew that's where he was at. So we went to the Leesburg Elks for lunch that day, but the thing I remember is when my dad, a number of years ago, had his first open heart surgery, and my mom and I were really upset about the whole situation, and the day of the surgery, we were nervous wrecks. We didn't know whether we'd ever see him alive again or whatever. And we had a lot of family support there, and Uncle Bob was one of them, and my Uncle John also. And most of you don't know my Uncle John, but he's somewhat of a character also. But our minister was also there, Reverend Hoffman. Well, my Uncle John and Uncle Bob had Reverend Hoffman cornered. Well, he was telling him a story about, and I know I won't get this right, but he's telling him about a lady went to the funeral home to see her husband or whatever, and just didn't look right. Something about the outfit that he had on just didn't look right. So the undertaker said, well, I can take care of that. You just go to the other room and I'll come back in a little while. So a couple minutes later, he calls her back in, and she says, oh, well, that's much better. She said, he looks so much better now. What did you do? He said, well, I just switched bodies with the other person that was laying there. And I don't know, just from that point on, what was such a tense atmosphere for the rest of the time that Dad was in surgery, everybody just lights up, and we had a good time. And so I'll never forget him sitting there that day with our minister talking. You never know what might happen next. But happy birthday, Uncle Bob.
Very much for inviting me. This is truly an honor for me and the people that couldn't make it from work, Robert, family members. And the women let me know something this week when things come up. Somebody, the boys, one of the prom, Dawson, another guy, he used to take his family to Disney World. And they said the women will never forget Tough Bob whenever his little Beth went to college. They said the man had a heart. He guaranteed that that car was filled with gas. And the first time of that phone ringing, I owe a lot to Bob. One thing being my name. When I have a birth certificate that shows my name is Clyde Curtis Irwin. But after I met Bob, I found out my real name was Clyde. My parents named after my grandfathers, but Bob, when you first got hired there, he would take people under his wings and take you over to the local coffee shop, which was the numbers place, what it was. So he introduced me to George, and George didn't quite hear him, and he thought he said Clyde. Well, I didn't know Bob much at all then, and I looked at him, and George turned around and he said, well, nice to meet you, Clyde. And I looked at Bob, and Bob says, that's right, Clyde. And it was Clyde from that point on. People, I don't know if you really appreciate what Bob, we called him Mr. Social Security because the people in our area, he was Social Security. Forget about, the Roosevelt and the Congress and all that. Someone mentioned that he met Bob down in Leesburg one day. Well, Bob would go to Vandergrift each Wednesday, and then during the week, different times, he'd go to Paula and Leesburg. It was like our contact station to these people out there. And in the summer, especially in Leesburg, there's no air conditioning, so he got kind of right, after you're there for a while. And Robert walked in, and there's some ladies there, and an older gentleman, of course, and it's his turn, and the guy kept telling people, come in, no, you go. No, I'll wait, you go. So Bob's there about 2.5 hours, and finally the place is empty, and the guy comes back to talk to Robert. Bob said, no, how can I help you, sir? And the guy looked down and said, is Social Security okay? Bob looked him flat in the eye. It's fine. Thank you, Mr. Johnston. That's all you had to know. Bob said it was okay. It was okay. There's a lot of little things along the way with Robert. He used to keep track. He worked a lot of overtime. And he had a little match one with the manager who made the highest income salary. Of course, the manager didn't know it because Bob was sneaking in his office after hours. He came out, I got him by $52.50. But everybody, when Bob retired, that was a real blow. to the people, in the service area, you know, we still get calls that for 10, 15 years. I want to talk to Mr. Johnson. Well, he's home. He's retired, you know. Well, give me his number. No, can't do that. But Robert, he's quite a guy. His sidekick, that Tim Dawson I mentioned, those two were like, you know, you saw one, you saw the other, and you better watch out, because something was up with these two. But they took care of the contact stations. Now, Tim at the time, he was, early 20s. So when they went out to these areas, Bob made sure he got the Medicare, he got everything else, and Tim got all the student benefit problems. And that didn't work good for them. But again, I'm most pleased to be here tonight. Thank you for inviting me, and you're one heck of a guy. Thank you, Robert. Happy birthday.
I want to say a few words too about myself, and after 56 years of marriage, I don't know how I look or how it is, but anyhow, he has one sister, and she lives in Columbus, Mississippi, and she was the one that I went to California with. So she called me about 6 months ago, and she said that she was taking a cruise to the Cayman Islands, and she would be arriving in San Diego the 4th of May. And if I would meet her in San Diego, and I talked to her, I had never been to California. So I took her up on it, and it was a great trip. She couldn't be here tonight because she has two children that's graduating from high school, and she's got another grandson that's leaving to work in Montana. But anyhow, I thought it was, I didn't even tell my family. But I arrived in San Diego the 4th of May. And the 5th of May, they were coming in on the Star Princess ship. So, you know, with him being in the Navy, when he came out, he said he had enough of the waters and no more cruising, and we never did take a cruise. So I went down to the desk, and I said to the clerk at the desk, do you have two names that are coming in from the Star Princess this morning? Give a reservation for Alice Stallworth and Betty Bailey. And they looked it up, and they did. So I said, well, you know, if they're coming in, if they're coming over here by van or bus or whatever, and she said, well, you'll have to talk to them. Now listen, Jim, I got it wrong. Concierge.
Pretty close.
So anyhow, she sent me over to talk to concierge. He's the one that changes reservations and makes arrangements to go just like a pastor. So I went over and sat down beside him, and I said, is it possible that, or I said, are you going over to the Star Princess to pick up anybody come to this hotel? And he said, there's 6 people. I said, is there any way that I could ride along? He does like cruises. So I thought, well, I could at least look at a ship. So I went over. I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyhow, the concierge took me out to where the buses load, and he said, now, there's 6 people coming over here today, and he said, you're going to have to take the larger bus. So I mentioned to him that, and I laughed, and I said, well, this is probably quite a question to ask, but can I ride along? And he said, if you want to, he said, okay, come on, get in. So we took off to the boat, or ship. And it was about half an hour. I didn't tell him. He's a Murraysville. He doesn't know what's going on.
What else happened?
So I went over to the a ship with him, and he was so nice, he even parked double parked. There were buses and vans, everything waiting there for the people coming off the ship. And to me, to the average person, it wouldn't be anything but to me it was, because I don't get to see ships. And this big ships came in, they started, of course, taking off the baggage first, and then they started taking the people who started come off. Well, anyhow, so there were about 2,500 people and 600, what do you call them, workers or crew, or what is it, Alan? So, the ones who all work on the ship. But anyhow, then she came over, we all came over to the hotel, and I had a very enjoyable time in San Diego. We went to Wild Animal Farm and the zoo, and we took a tour of San Diego. But what impressed me was La Jolla. If anybody's ever been to La Jolla,
what is it, you know? And it was very pretty, but we didn't know what it was. I remember the one Christmas we spent, we looked the longest time, it was a sterling silver pin cushion. It was, I mean, it really was. It was the little cushiony velvet cover inside, sterling silver container, and, right, remember that?
What did we think it was?
I don't know.
We thought it was one of these self-images that you
Open the press.
We never knew. I can't wait to see what this is.
It's level to pop out of it.
He's alive, Jeffrey.
Must be something in there somewhere.
Another picture.
Something there somewhere. All this crap in a little box.
Oh, well.
Who in the world would know what this is? Sure, I do. It looks like a fish. What do you do with it? Don't tell me.
You carry it in your back with you and play with your
There's a car that's raising it off.
See you on your 85th. Sorry, I can't make it this time. Love you, your sister. But I really appreciate it.
Now act like.
Nobody in the world ever saw anything like that.
Anybody ever seen it? It came from the Birch Aquarium in San Diego. Now, anybody ever seen one like that?
Oh my God, I never saw such a thing.
That'll look good in your bathtub with the sailboats and rubber duckies and stuff.
I just always was very fortunate because Beth being an only child, I got to be the other child that went along everywhere on vacation, out to restaurants, probably up here 100 times with Uncle Bob and Kit and Beth. Ocean City, summertime, spent many a night down at Beth's house. And I have to put this in. Watching Beth put Ambisol Jr. on her toenails. It's an old family joke. She never went to bed without doing it. Even as a young child. But anyways, I really just wanted to come out to wish Uncle Bob a happy birthday and let him know that I appreciate everything that he's done all the years for all of us. Because I think we were real lucky as a family. We always all got together as a family, which many people weren't able to do nowadays. And we were always all there. That's just a little something from one of the trips we picked up last year, but it's a reminder of one of my trips with you. And we even got the history behind the man, so in case you're interested, we can...
Not a fish.
The bigger fish than Elvis's, no. There's one from our tank at home, actually. This birthday was one time Uncle Bob took us to Ocean City. Of course, Uncle Bob wanted to stay in the Holiday Inn and Kid wanted to stay at the Practical Motel. I won't tell you where we stay, but yeah, yeah. Do you remember that place, Uncle Bob? This is the first time I ever ate down there with Uncle Bob. It was the best steakhouse in Ocean City, Maryland. He said. So Uncle Bob sent me on to Melvin's in Ocean City, and we still go there.
Yeah, I remember you there. Yeah.
Happy birthday, Uncle Bob.
When we moved into the house that was formerly occupied by the Lichtenfelds 16 years ago, it hardly seems possible, but I guess that was before Beth and Jim came back to Pennsylvania, right? It was a couple of years after that. So while we were moving in, we had our usual unpacking things to do and getting the house together, and one of the things that first thing I had to do was put up a new mailbox. Just put up a new mailbox, and I had gone around the house, and I came out from behind the house again, and Bob had attacked my mailbox with all the ferocity of the Battle of Brazil. The back of his car was still over the mailbox, so I couldn't deny it. And he had gotten out of his car, and he was kind of hobbling around apologetically, and I told him it was all right, and over the years, he's mentioned it a few times. He's very embarrassed about it. And I probably would have forgotten about it, but I was saving this as a gift. And I was going to give this to Bob on his 100th birthday. But I can't keep presents. So Bob, on your 80th birthday, I want you to know I forgive you for smashing our mail.
That's not like they had when they're putting in the sewage. They had one of those big compressors sitting out there right in front of Bruce Floyd's house, along your driveway. So he's trying to work this morning, hurrying to get going. He backed right into it. So see, that's not the only thing he's
Seems to be a pattern.
Yeah.
Stay away from our house, Bob.
Should I put a garbage can on my mailbox?
You better hold on.
We got a call one evening at the house, and this guy was all worked up. He was from Sardis. He said, "My wife and I are coming over to see you, Mr. Johnson." I said, "You are?" So they insisted on coming, so they came just about the time we were eating. So, come in the house, and it seemed as though they were getting a combined check. You know, his name and her name, one check. So he said to me, Kitchener in a region somewhere, he said, "Now, I did all the work under Social Security. Why the hell does she get any of this money?" I said, "Look," "she's entitled to a wife's benefit, buddy." He said, "No, she isn't, because I did all the work." I said, "Look, she never had to work herself at all to get a wife's benefit. If she wanted, she filed for benefit." He said, "Well, I'm going to see about this." So I said to the woman, I said, "Do you want to get your own separate check?" She said, "Yes." So I had a $7.95 signed by her. Wasn't very long that she started to get her own check. But he thought since he did all the work, she wasn't entitled to anything. Poor woman, you ought to seen that guy living with him and her living with me. There was one time that, you used to have black lung benefits. I guess they still. We used to administer it, but we don't now. The Department of Labor program. But anyhow, this guy fought for black lung for a long time. He battled it. Finally won. So his first check was a retroactive check for over $10,000. So instead of sending that check to him, they sent it to the office. And of course, me being a field man, they wanted me to go out and see if the guy was in his right mind, you know, and was capable of receiving it. You know. So I made a little trip that day out to in the vicinity of Apollo. And I rapped on the door. These people lived in a cave. You think I'm BS? Just in a cave. Cut back into a still. I could still go there. Of course, it may not be there now. But anyhow, they opened this door. It's sort of a, I don't know, flat or something. And about 5,000, about 50 or 60 bees or flies flew right out of my face. And you could, you know, the smell was terrible. Now, there were 4 people living in that cave. I didn't even go inside after that. So I called the guy over, the old guy with the long beard, came over. I said, how are you doing? You know, a general conversation. I was trying to figure out if in my opinion he was competent. So I decided that the old boy was competent. So I handed him the check. He said, what's this? You know? I said, well, that's the retroactive check that you got from the black one claim that you filed a couple of years ago. He said, well, okay. He said, thank you very much. I said, now what will you do with that? He said, oh, I'll go right over to the Apollo Trust Company. He said, I'll take care of it. I checked it. He did deposit the check at the Apollo Trust Company. And the guy had his commies living in a hole like that, you know. Some of the things that happen, you know. But one time when Joe Schultz was the manager of the office, Big Joe, he's bigger than I am, he got a notice from Baltimore at the central office where somebody was not cashing a check. So Joe Schultz and I went out to investigate to see what was wrong. Now this woman was born in Lebanon. She looked like, no reflection on anybody, but she looked like that picture on the dromedary dates or something, you know, on a camel. I guess I can mention it. I'll never forget her name. Her name was Kadichi Ali. Now, she had been holding 27 checks. Okay, that's over 2 years worth of checks. So, Joe and I entered the alleyway. See, she lived in the back of Fifth Avenue in Kensington, so we had to enter the alley. And she saw us coming in, and she started screaming bloody murder. So right away we left. We didn't want to scare the daylights out. We already had. So I didn't know how to get to that woman, so I knew that the guy in the post office, he spoke, you know, Arabic or whatever he spoke. So I went to him and I said, hey, Mufti, what are we going to do about this woman that's holding all these checks? He said, well, maybe I can get to her. I said, did she ever cash a check? She said, yeah, she comes in here once in a while, and she won't let anybody touch the check except me. And when she gets the money, she gets down on the floor in the New Kensington post office, puts the 20s there and the 10s there, and the 5s and the 1s, and the change. Has everything laying out on the floor, and people come in, you know, they look at her, and but anyhow, he says, yeah, she cashes one once in a long time. I said, well, she's got 27. Well, to make a long story short, we eventually got her to bring the checks to Mufti. And Mufti cashed them and put them in her savings account, which was over $6,000 in the Pittsburgh National Bank, and nobody knew she had a damn thing. So it's just some of the things that would happen. Of course, the old lady died, and some guy from Newcastle, he was the executive. I guess he got the loot, but anyhow, that's just another thing that happened. Well, of course, there are many other things. I did touch on one of the things. When Tim Dawson and I used to go to Vandergrift every Wednesday, we
we would sometimes have 20 or 30 people waiting for us. And I made sure that he got all the young broads, because he was a young guy, and I took all the older people. If one of the young ones would come to me, I'd say, well, now you want to see Tim about that, Mr. Dawson over here. You just have a seat over there, you go over and see Mr. Dawson. And, you know, one of these girls wanted to post security numbers, so you fill out an ethics file or something. She did that. And Tim would help them fill it out, you know, it's a very simple thing to complete. But he would be glad to help them. So he would say, now, how old are you? Do you have any boyfriends? He'd pretend he was writing to someone. Do you ever go out? You know? He'd go into all kinds of detail. It would take him about 10 minutes to fill out a form that normally you fill out in 3 minutes. But anyhow, we got away with murder in that respect. But she worked with God. I want to thank everybody here today for coming to this. I never thought there'd be so many enemies. I mean, so many friends. So anyhow. I did specify no guest, but, you know, sometimes that happens. So I appreciate your coming and everything, and thank you. That's all I can say.
Uncle Bob was very nice. Every time me and my brother Jeffrey would go to his house, he would always say hello and be very nice.
You want him to come?
I want him to get my fish. Hey.